Now we're going to look at we solved this equation. This f of x is sine x and g of x is cos 2x minus 1. We solved it, and we let sine x equal cosine 2x minus 1. And then we solved that trig equation. We found four values that fit between minus 90 and 270. Well, what if you had to graph this between minus 90 and 270? Well, this is what you'd do. First, you'd go and make a mark, minus 90, 0, 90, 180 to 270, just like that. Now, you have to know that sine starts at 0 degrees, the very basic sine graph. It goes up to 90 and 1, comes back to 180 and 0, and then goes down to 270 and minus 1. So the fundamental sine graph you should just get, you sure shouldn't need a calculator. It drops down to minus 90. So this is the wave that goes on and on. But here it's between minus 90 and 270. That takes care of sine x. Now it's a little bit trickier, cos 2x. Now it's way better than using a calculator to just understand cos x. You should know that the basic cos x graph starts at 1, goes to 90, then minus 180 and 90. Well, this one should start at 1, except it says minus 1. So it should shift down. Instead of starting at 1, it starts at 0. So 0 and 0 is one of the points that fits on this function. Now, this cosine 2x here, when you have a number 2 in front of the x, what it does is it changes the period. The normal period is 360. Well, now the period is going to be 180. That means instead of going through 360 degrees in a wave, it's going to go through a complete wave in 180 degrees. And the step, instead of being something happening every 90 degrees, should be 45 degrees. Well, we know the basic shape of the cosine graph. You can just graph it in now, because you start at 0 and 0. So then at 45 degrees, it goes to minus 1. At 90 degrees, it must go to minus 2. At 135 degrees, just add 45, it goes back to minus 1, and then it goes back to 0, back to where it started. So it would have been from 1 to 0 to minus 1 to 0 to 1, but everything's dropped down 1. So it goes from 0 to minus 1 to minus 2. Well, that's the basic shape. But that shape just keeps continuing. It goes back to minus 1 and then back to minus 2 at 270. It drops to minus 1 at down to 40 every 45 degrees, and then to minus 2. Now you can type this into your table function in your graph. Make the step 45 degrees every 45 degrees. Start at minus 90 and end at 270, and your calculator will give you all these values. But it's way better to understand how the shape of the graph and do it without it. You do have to sketch the endpoints, where the curve turns at 90 and 1 for sine, 90 and minus 2, this endpoint of 270 and minus 2, and this other endpoint for sine of 270 and minus 1. There's your sine graph, labeled F, and there's your cos 2x minus 1. It would be up at 1, but it's dropped down 1, and it's going through a wave in half the time. Well, that's it. That's the story. That's the story of how you sketch the graph. You could try it with your calculator. Maybe you'd like your calculator to support you, but it's better to understand why the graph's like this. I hope it helps.